And welcome to today's Zoom call on the new Manitoba Bridge Grant that was just announced on Tuesday. Before we dive into the session, I would like to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 1 territory and that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Adam Kilfoyle, and I am the chair of the Assiniboia Chamber of Commerce, and also the managing partner of the accounting firm Heartland CPAs. A few of my colleagues at the Chamber are also on the call, and I want to recognize them here now. Mahmoud Batla, our second vice chair, Mike Cabral, past chair, and directors Ian Leet, James Barena, and Nicole Bowering, who is also a school board trustee from the St. James Assiniboia School Division. We've been diligently working at growing our chamber, not just in membership numbers, but also in awareness in our community over the past 2 years. The drive, commitment, and passion I see in my fellow board members is something that I want to acknowledge today. I would also like to recognize that we have the Honorable Ralph Eichler, Minister of Economic Development and Training with us. Also, John Reyes, the MLA for Waverley, with us on the call today. This past Tuesday, our entire province received the news that we were all going to be in the critical red status of the pandemic as of Thursday. News did not necessarily come as a surprise to us, but it is one that we were honestly hoping to avoid. What we also heard on Tuesday was the announcement of the new Manitoba Bridge Grant that will be providing $5,000 in protection to businesses, not-for-profits, and charities that have been impacted by COVID-19 restrictions. I'm pleased to introduce the Honorable Scott Fielding, MLA for Kirkville Park, and since 2018, Minister of Finance for the province of Manitoba. Scott has always been an active member of the community and has served on the board of various organizations, including the Winnipeg Convention Center, the Assiniboine Park Conservancy, and the St. James Village Business Improvement Zone. The owner of a small management consulting business, Scott has also been an active member of the Assiniboia Chamber of Commerce. Scott is honored to continue his service to the community as the MLA for Kirkville Park, which I appreciate as a born and raised Kirkville Parker. We're all eager to hear more about the grant, and I'm sure that there are a few questions to be asked. Please feel free to ask your questions in the chat, and you will be called upon to unmute your microphone to ask the question yourself. If you would like to ask the question anonymously, please private chat with Christy Meek, who will ask Scott the question on your behalf. Thank you. Mr. Minister, please go ahead.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you very much for being here. And I'm going to try and broaden it out, and we're going to try and do it, somewhat casually for the most part. But I'm going to try and go through a number of the grant programs, as well as some of the federal programs that are there for businesses that want to tap into these types of things. So again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to update you on a number of these. As we know, the situation in Manitoba, really across the nation, and I think if you look in the United States and everywhere else, is getting fairly serious in the last number of weeks, which led to the decision to put the whole province in a critical phase of red. This is a measure that I can tell you that we didn't take lightly. It's a public health measure that has an impact on your business, but I think also it's important that we get this under control. We know the impact that it has on many businesses, either directly or indirectly. However, the best way, again, to help Manitoba businesses right now to get this under control. And we can get this under control. It can help you in the long run in terms of making sure that lockdowns aren't something that we have for next little while. We're going to be, dealing with COVID-19, even though you talk about you talk about a vaccine and other things that are there. We're going to be dealing with this for quite some time. I would anticipate, well into March or so, dealing with this until we're kind of out of the flu and cold season, until the vaccine is, for the most part, in the province. And you have, the testing capacity is there, and we're in the fortunate situation, I think, in the first part. Clearly, we were able to manage the virus here in Manitoba quite well. The second phase is obviously gotten to some of the personal care homes, which is you've seen some tragic incidents that are happening right now. And where this seems to be having dramatic amounts of impact, of course, is more the seniors population, or people that are vulnerable in so many different ways. And so, in any event, I'm going to get into some of the relief measures, and I think Ralph is on the call. I haven't seen him as of yet, and John Reyes as well is here. So if Ralph and or John would like to chime in at all at any of these, then we can most definitely do as such. Our government has implemented various COVID-19 relief measures to assist Manitobans and businesses during the unprecedented times that we're in here. You can take a look at it, the Restart Manitoba Economic Recovery Plan. We tried to make investments since this happened over the last 8 months, and supports for businesses, but supports for individuals. I'm going to go through some, and some we just announced, as mentioned. Really, when you look across the provinces, Manitoba has done a lot. In fact, the Parliamentary Budget Office, which is kind of a third party, there's not a partisan nature to it. They evaluated all the supports the provinces have done, versus all over the provinces. And they're suggesting that Manitoba has spent actually the second or third highest spending amongst Canada. It represents about 3.2% of our GDP, or about $2.3 billion in supports for many people. And as mentioned earlier on, we've made an investment just on Thursday or earlier in the week rather, supports about $250 million, so $250 million of additional supports, which we're going to go through and explain to you. And again, if there's some ways we can help navigate kind of the systems, because there's a lot of programs, it gets confusing. There's federal government programs, the wage subsidy, which has been, I think, very good program. And of all the programs out there, I think that it probably has been the best. There is also a commercial rent program that's in place. And so there were some problems initially with that program. It's a program run by the federal government, but we chimed in with financial support from the provinces. And they made some important changes. We really lobbied them to change them, all the provinces did, because before your landlord would have to apply for the program, and sometimes they wanted to do that, sometimes they didn't. I think probably a lot of landlords are looking to get 100% of the rent as opposed to taking a bit of a haircut at 25%. So the program has changed now. It's tenants can apply for this, and it is an important program now. It should be up and running very soon. I think they are debating it in the House of Commons. But essentially what that will provide you, if you're completely shut down, it will provide your rent up to 90% of your rent if you're completely shut down. And if let's say you're 70% down, maybe you're still doing some curbside or whatever the deal may be, your revenues are down by 60, 70%, it kind of sliding scale goes down. And so that program can support your rent again, and I think it's outwards to June. So that can support some of your fixed costs. With these things, they're important, and even in my own personal life, we have a businesses that is impacted by this. We've had to lay off 40 of our 85 staff already because of it. So, I do know what you're going through as a business owner. It's challenging times, it's scary times, and we're trying to develop some programs at all levels of government to support businesses. We're never going to be able to give you all the revenue back that you had, but we want to give you a really way to bridge through this. And so that's really important. And so we try to listen quite a bit. With Mr. Eichler's on the phone, he's done an extraordinary job of really consulting with businesses. And the latest rounds of supports that we introduced really was based on what we heard from the Chambers of Commerce and the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses and other lobby groups that have put them together. But I'm going to go through a number of the programs again, and some are programs that have been in place, and some we'll talk a little bit more, and I can answer your questions. So among the measures that we have taken, again, the Manitoba GAP program, that was the program we initially put in place to give about $6,000 to individual businesses if you were kind of left out. A lot of people in the gig economy and others, if you didn't have any federal supports. That was a program. Back to work wage subsidy program, so it provides supports for you to hire on businesses. There was a lot of businesses that took us up on that offer. The Manitoba Risk Recognition Program, that supported individuals and people that were working the front line, maybe like a grocery store clerk or what have you, that were working through the process. And we've also put on a variety of different tax measures. But to individually go through some of them, again, the $120 million Risk Recognition Program, it provided a one-time payment for eligible essential workers. And so the province, it's a program that was established in the federal government and the provincial government for individuals. And what it did, it supported upwards just under 80,000 Manitobans. And so there'd be people working in personal care homes, again, people working in areas like grocery stores or what have you. If you're making under $5,000 a month, then you'd be able to accept it. And of the 80,000 Manitobans that took it up, there's around 654,000 people that work generally in Manitoba in the workforce. So that represents about 12% of the total labor force in Manitoba. they got a check for about $1,300 from the government, and so that was an important measure. We also did some seniors economic recovery as a $200 tax credit or tax check that went out to seniors. The federal government also did one for about $300. There's about 226,000 seniors. About 93% of seniors cashed this in. It cost about $45 million. Seniors were impacted quite a bit, specifically in the first phase, because they would continuously be going if they had a number of prescriptions. You may recall that they limited the amount of times you could go fill the prescriptions at some of the pharmacies just to make sure you're not traveling with the virus. And so there was a lot of support that was given. There's additional tax supports. We eliminated on residential and commercial property insurance by removing the PST. Now that would make up just individually about $75 individually. It's not a huge amount of money, but for businesses, it represents about $880 for each individual business. So we've eliminated that year. Also things like PST on preparation of wills and deferrals on a number of different tax measures, things like your PST remittance, as well as your payroll tax that you're paying. Also things like vehicle registration fees were lowered by about 10%. And refunds of approximately $110 million were issued for Manitoba public insurance for your vehicles. And all the taxations and fee reductions help Manitobans keep a little bit more money in their pockets, which is important. Again, just kind of reverting back to some of the programming. The gap protection program, again, that was the $6,000 program if you didn't get any federal supports. We supported about 9,800 businesses, just under 10,000 businesses used the gap protection program. And that was almost $60 million in direct supports to businesses. And that's kind of above and beyond some of the other measures at the Ottawa level as well. We know the gap protection program was important. And the one change that we have made is if you were able to tap into the gap protection program, the 10,000 businesses, if you did use it, either it could be a grant if you didn't receive any other programming, or if you did, let's say, maybe get it and then you got more federal support, it would actually turn into a loan, but we've changed that now. So if you did have the gap protection program and you're counting on having to repay the loan, you don't have to now. It's a grant program that's in place. So allow Manitoba businesses to receive the grant and they can apply at the level. There was also the Back to Work in Manitoba Wage Subsidy Program, and it was we invested about $46 million. And again, that was money that essentially the government would subsidize you hiring back some of your staff. Initially, it started with students, and then it went to employees. So I think we had, and if Mr. Eckler's on the line, you could probably verify this later on, but I think upwards of 8,000 or 8,600 types of positions were supported in that respect. The one important change that we have made, if you have tapped into that program, again, it was the wage subsidy program at the provincial level. Then we're going to cash advance. Like before, you'd have to wait till the new year to get your money back. So we're cash advancing that back to you. So let's say you had 5 employees that you hired on with this program, you'll get about $1,500 per employee, right? So you get about $5,500 back on that for the most part. So it is something that will help tune about $15 million. And that program is still open until December 1st. These programs have been really useful in helping contribute to a business environment where Manitoba ranks first, and again, this is before the shutdowns, but we were ranked first in private sector employment and second in employment compared to other provinces. So there's more people that were working. However, we recognize, again, because of the new restrictions, that's out the window. So what we've introduced as well, again, a part of the $250 million business supports that we announced on Tuesday when we announced the restrictions was, as mentioned, the Manitoba Bridge Grant Program, which provides really, you could have up to $10,000. Now, initially, it's initial $5,000 one-time payment for small, medium-sized businesses, for nonprofits, for charity organizations that were directly impacted by the temporary orders. So this is a business that had been shut down, or let's say you're working at less capacity, your revenues are dramatically down because people can't come into your retail setting, but you may still be doing curbside and that sort of stuff. You can apply for this program. You'll get right off the bat, it's going to be opening, the portal's opening up on Monday. Once you're accepted, and again, it's very broad, so if you have been impacted, you would be accepted into this program. They'll make the application, opens Monday, they'll make a decision kind of daily, and once you'll get an email back saying, yes, you've been approved, within 48 hours, you'll get $5,000 that we put right into your bank account. We'll get you the kind of the transfer types of issues to do that. If the restrictions are still in place by January, we're hopeful that this short circuit breaker initiative will address this. And we're seeing some initial good signs so far of it, that you get another $5,000 January 1st, and that would come directly into your bank account as well. So it's up to $10,000 that would be part of it. So each of those initiatives, the first one providing the $5,000 for the number of businesses we anticipate will be about $100 million. And the second one in January would be another $100 million for the government. And the third thing is we've worked with the Chamber of Commerce and other business entities to say, okay, what needs are going to be out there post-January? Hopefully we're again through the bulk of this, but if not, we put $50 million to places like the Manitoba Chamber of Commerce, as well as Economic Development in Winnipeg, to develop kind of some modeling of what other additional supports you may need. That's there. And so that we'll be working with the business community to develop those types of things. Included in this bridge program that we had talked about, that includes restaurants, bars, beverage rooms, brew pubs, microbreweries, distilleries, casinos, recreation and sports facilities, museums and galleries, theaters, concert halls, as well as organizations like charities, nonprofits, faith-based organizations that have been really adversely impacted. These grants are provided again on a top of the other provincial and federal programs. So now with this new bridge program, before we said, okay, if you're kind of in a gap and you didn't get any supports from Ottawa, maybe you're in the gig economy, a whole bunch of other things, you couldn't apply for that. But with the new program, you can. So whether you're getting the wage subsidy in Ottawa or you're getting the commercial rent program that will be up and running over the next few weeks. Again, it's an Ottawa-run program, but then you can apply for that $5,000 and potentially another $5,000 program in January. So those are important initiatives that we want to continue to work with you guys, the business community. Again, I've got personal experience in their business, and we're impacted as well. And so I do understand what businesses are going from, and we're trying to listen to businesses and give you the supports that are in place. That's there. In terms of restarting Manitoba's economy and taxation, Manitoba's road recovery will continue to focus on really two different strategies: further investments in public health preparedness, investments in jobs and growth. But right now, our number one priority is making sure Manitobans are safe, and that's really why we've had to go down to this lockdown. Manitoba was rapid in responding with investments in personal protection equipment and other health-related different areas. We have about a 3-month supply for the most part of these types of personal protection types of equipment for individuals. And on a per capita basis, our share of GDP on pandemic-related kind of initiatives are about third highest in Canada, about 3.5%. Only Quebec and Ontario have, purchased more for the most part, but we do feel that we do have enough protective equipment that's needed. Under the Restart Manitoba Economic Recovery Plan, Manitoba is doing well relative to other provinces. 3 of the major financial institutions suggest, again, that Manitoba's economy could drop by about 5.2%, but it's going to pick up around the same amount next year. We do know that there's some positive news that's happening with some vaccines that are out there and some of the rapid testing that's happening, but really, we need to get through this together as Manitobans, and we think it's important the measures we're taking. I know it's hard for businesses with the shutdowns. I hear exactly what you're saying, but I think probably what's best right now for businesses is if we can get this under control, and that way you can have a short kind of circuit breaker, I guess, if you will, breakdown from addressing the virus. We know it's attacking vulnerable populations more than anywhere else, but it is really important that we get this under control. So that's really kind of our top priorities. Again, we want to protect Manitobans and we want to support you as best we can. For the most part, I think we've tried to listen to businesses and groups. So if there's other things we can look at, everything's on the table. We want to make sure that businesses are supported and can get through this. Again, we're never going to replace the total amount of revenue that you may lose from this and really from the pandemic. And that's something that really all businesses around the world are facing right now. And so we're trying to do the best we can. And, I'm sure we made some mistakes along the way, but there isn't really a play map for getting this done right. And, at the end of the day, we want to listen to people and we want to make sure there's supports for you, business people. And with that, maybe I'll turn it back to your hosts. And if there's any questions I can answer, again, if Ralph Eichler is on the line, he can probably answer all the hard questions and I'll answer all the easy questions.
Hi, Scott. It's Christy Meek, obviously President and Executive Director of the Manitoba Chamber. We received some questions ahead of time, so I'd like to ask them now. And I know the case that if you're not able to answer it directly on this call, that you'll be forwarding it to me to pass along to, of course, all attendees and the membership. The first one I got was, I am a sole proprietor or solopreneur that is unincorporated. COVID-19 is affecting my business like many others, but there are hardly any grants or programs that I can apply for. Will the bridge grant be open for me to apply?
Yeah, it should be. We'd have to look at the specific cases. We can get that information to our office and we can look into it on your behalf.
Okay.
It is administered under my department through finance, so I can, I'll clearly have an insight in respect to that. Really, it's businesses that have been shut down. You've been impacted by the health orders. Your revenue streams have been brought down in so many different ways from it. So, and that was the original GAP program that we had, because we found there's a lot of people maybe in the gig economy, I guess I'll call it, that weren't able to tap into some of the federal programs that for the most part have been pretty good. And so they should be able to apply for it. We can work with the individual and just get the name and number. They can contact our office and we can work with you to make sure it's there. The portal again does open on Monday.
Yes.
So they can apply at that point on Monday, and it doesn't matter if they've had other federal supports that would support them. So it sounds like that would fall into one of the categories, but we can work with that business.
Perfect. I'll let them know not to contact you right after this call, but next week after they check the application.
Well, they can contact us if we want to. We can kind of do some pre-work. We got, for the most part, the criteria that's set out. So I can kind of give you insight if it would be acceptable. Yeah.
Perfect. I have 3 more questions and then I'll open it up. Just my wife and I own a metaphysical store. We are doing all we can online and with curbside pickup. Our competitors are using loopholes to stay open, which we know is wrong. What can we do to compete? I also am aware of some of these loopholes where certain businesses are just adding hand sanitizer. They bought a box and all of a sudden they can open. So I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, well, the health orders are fairly clear in terms of the types of businesses that have been shut down. There is a lot more enforcement that's going on. You want to make sure there's a level playing field, so we can look into that for sure. At the end of the day, if people can do the curbside and that sort of stuff, that's preferable. I'll say there wasn't as much enforcement in, let's say, the March and April area. I think, like everyone else, they're tired of this, right? They're tired of all the not just restrictions, but everything that's stressful that's going on. And so we've added a lot more enforcement. Really, I think for the most part, everyone that I know in my kind of orbit seems to be doing everything they can. I'm assuming most people are as well. You get a few people that are still kind of flaunting some of the rules and they're going to operations and not telling people that they have COVID, and all of a sudden everyone that does the operation is in quarantine, right? Or people that were going to bars before, they're going to whatever ceremony. So the rules are in place to make sure that people aren't breaking them. But with that being said, there should be some level playing field. So we can look into that for sure for that individual.
Perfect. I'll pass along all the contact information following. I have 2 more questions. As designated an essential business, can we still apply for the grant? Or because we are allowed to stay open, are we disqualified even though we cannot operate at full capacity?
Well, the grant is made out for people that have been impacted by it. So if you're kind of one of the non-essential, I guess, businesses, even if you're doing curbside pickup, yes, you could apply for it. I guess I'd have to kind of, understand what business that is or what sort of essential service they're providing. But for the most part, if people have been impacted, the revenues that are coming in from one way or the other, then I believe they would be supported through the program. But again, I'd have to kind of get the details of it, and we, on a case-by-case basis, they would look at it. But the program really is made for people that have been impacted by the orders, not just the ones earlier in the week, but the bars and the restaurants that have been, where kind of their hours were reduced and then they were shut down a week earlier, they can apply for that as well.
Okay.
You know, I think just really for individuals, you know, once this federal program for the rent really is up and running, and it should be over the next 2 weeks, again, that should cover you up to 90% of some of their fixed costs. Again, if you haven't been totally shut down, you know, it's a sliding scale, so that would support some of that fixed costs. The wage subsidy at the federal level is for the most part a pretty good program that supports people. If you're able to tap into the bridge program that we're having, again, it's not going to make up the revenue, but we're trying to do as much as we can. So those would be the three things that I think as a business person would be the most applicable to some of the people that are on the call here today.
Perfect. And then my last question is, will this $5,000 be taxable?
It is taxable, so I think you want to make sure that you're you know, planning for that in the future. Some of the programs we have taken some money off at source, but it is important to plan for that, right? And to make sure. Now, probably your revenues are down. I guess it depends on, you know, the corporate tax rate, obviously 12%. But you know, your revenues are down. But yes, it is a taxable thing. So make sure you do that planning.
Thank you. I now, just from the chat, Nicole Bowering is on the call. She's the trustee for the St. James Assiniboia School Division. She's also one of our directors on our board. She has a question for you. So Nicole, if you wanted to unmic yourself and ask away.
Ooh, sorry, I unmuted too soon and I got all the feedback. Hi, Minister Fielding. It's nice to see you again. Thank you so much for this initiative for the businesses in our chamber community especially. And also thank you to the government and health authority for recognizing that our schools are a fairly safe place to be right now and for keeping the schools open, because that's making a huge difference for our kids. I don't have a question about the $5,000 grant. As you can understand with the SJASD, it doesn't so much apply. We're a bit of a different entity, but I did have just a quick question, if you don't mind. Part of our delivery of education in these trying times, we've kind of have two things that come up as families are becoming less secure in employment, and as businesses are sort of shutting down and revenues not as plentiful as it once was. We are needing to find connectivity options for our students. And obviously that's an extra expense and an extra concern. And the other thing is food security is becoming increasingly hard for some of our families, and we're needing to provide more food for our students. So I'm just wondering if, I think this small business funding is fantastic. Are we going to see anything to support families, community families on the back end with things like internet connectivity so they can do school from home if we get to that point, and food for those kids that have had families who have had to shut down businesses or have lost jobs due to the pandemic?
No, great question. Thank you. I'm going to deal with it kind of in two different areas. Number one, we worked with the federal government, and Premier Pallister led the charge with the Premier in BC, as well as, you know, 3 different parties and worked together on a sick leave program. So right now what happens is there's a nationally supported program if you're sick, for instance, or you're isolating, or you're taking care of maybe a loved one that is, you know, because of that, a child, you'll get 2 weeks sick leave from the federal government. It's about $500 a week. Let's say you lose your childcare because maybe your childcare setting sets down. The federal government, the sick leave program, will support individuals up to $500 a week for 26 weeks. So again, that's if people have lost their childcare. So that's a half a year coverage for the individuals. To go into your point about the education, so we initially invested about $100 million in the education system. That was made up of 3 different things. Number one, when the school was shut down, previously there were savings that were had, about $48 million. We also allocated about $12 million for PPE, the personal care protection items. And then we also did $40 million in just a recent budget bill. So there's $100 million that's there. We also got about $84 million from Ottawa for safe learning. We actually going to get that over 2 years. So the initial tranche is around $42-ish million, and we'll get the other money next year. And so we just announced the remote learning. And so that will allocate hiring about 100 new teachers. and 30 different teachers, aides, and then also kind of a call center to coordinate the remote learning. I think there'll be about 30 or some odd people that would be there to support individuals in the remote learning. In fact, actually, St. James has been a leader in this area. I can't remember what the initial name of the program was, but St. James and I think it's
InformNet, yep.
Yeah, so they kind of crafted this, the remote learning. So you guys are going to be used, and there's another school division out there, I can't remember which one, Pembina Trails potentially, will be kind of implementing that for us based on the good work that you guys have done. So the money, again, $100 million, and then there'll be $84 million to do it. We've spent so far, obviously the school year goes to June, as you well know. So right now we're right on track to spend that $100 million by the end of June for it. And so that's kind of identifies some of the health related issues, or health and education related issues. I think the education system, we really want to make sure the kids stay in school. I mean, I've got 3 kids in school, one in grade 11, one in grade 8, who for the most part did well during the first remote learning phase. And I've got a little guy who's in grade 3, now in grade 4. I'm not sure he was getting much out of the Zoom calls and stuff. So we really want to keep the kids in school. And for the most part, what we've seen is that, although there certainly has been cases, there hasn't been the mass spreading and for sure sickness that we've seen. But we want to keep our eye on the ball. I know Quebec mentioned today that they may be considering shutting down schools, but we'll have to see where it goes. So that's kind of soup to nuts, I guess, in the education system. One final point, I think you had mentioned about healthy learning. So we invested about $3.9 million on home nutrition and learning projects. So that was like kids that would come, they would have the lunch programs or the breakfast programs. So there has been money that has been allocated, about $4 million. I'm not in that direct area, so I can't tell you exactly where it is, but there has been monies allocated for that. And if we could do more, I'm sure we would very much consider that.
Thank you so much.
I'd now like to ask on James Barina. He has a question for you, Minister. James, you just need to unmic yourself.
Oh, there you go. Hi, Minister. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for all the initiatives that are helping out the small businesses that are getting their butt whooped at this time. And I just wanted to ask if you could reiterate what you said regarding those who applied for the wage subsidy not having to wait till January for the first check.
Yeah, so basically, if Ralph is on the call, he can catch me if I fall from saying it wrong. But for the most part, let's say you hired 4 or 5 students, right, or you hired 4 or 5 people, and you're able to tap into the provincial wage subsidy program. What would happen before is you'd have to wait till the new year to get your money. So right now, let's say you hired 5 students, you would get about $1,500. 5 students or 5 employees. You would get that money, what we're calling is advanced prior to having to wait in the year. So it's a cash flow thing. So if you were able to tap into that program, and again, if there's specific questions for your individual, my office can look into it for you. But essentially, that's it. You would get the cash advance. Ralph, I'm not sure if you're on the call, but if you are, so hopefully that's clear to you. I don't know if Ralph is on the call, but anyways, it's to provide you with a cash advance.
Thank you very much.
I don't see Ralph on the call unless he's calling in with a phone number, but if he is, I'll ask him to unmute.
Christy, maybe what I could do is just follow up with you with some information to the chamber, and you could maybe get it out to the chamber members just on that one piece.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask? Those were all the pre-questions that I received from our members. But feel free. We have the opportunity right now with Scott on the call to ask those questions. If you are, just unmute yourself. We'll wait. I'll let Adam take it over from here then, and we'll proceed.
Great. Well, I anticipate a lot of us will be logging in on Monday and submitting our applications for this grant. And thank you, Scott, for taking the time to speak with us and our membership today. Before we close, a couple matters. Christy mentioned that one of my colleagues on our board, Christy, maybe you can, why don't you unmute yourself, Christy, and talk about that. We've got a need for some cell phones, use cell phones to help with communications with some of those at-need members of our community. Christy, you want to speak about that for a second?
Sure. Brittany Odger, she's our donor and partnerships manager for Turning Leaf Support Services. She was unable to attend the call today just because of the urgency. So I'm just going to read a little blurb and then I'll send it out later. Turning Leaf Services is looking for a connection to someone that can help them get as many cell phones donated as possible. With Code Red and the new lockdown, their participants struggling with mental illness without phones will lose their supports and cannot call their staff in crisis. Many of their high-risk individuals are living in poverty and may be struggling with substance use and either homeless or living in unsafe circumstances. Without the ability to call their staff in a crisis and with no place to go during lockdown, Turning Leaf is very worried about their well-being and what may happen if they are left unsupported. If you know someone that could help Turning Leaf out, please contact Brittany Odger. If you want, just for ease sake, please send an email to me, contact me at the chamber, and I will gladly pass along that message during the urgent need. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Christy. So, and then before we close, I found out that even though it's Friday the 13th today, it's also World Kindness Day. Bet you didn't know that. So, and I think the latter seems appropriate to trump everything else. So with that, I'll end with a quote from Mark Twain. Kindness is the language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. So thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the day. Remember to #MaskUp and follow our public health orders. Support our local restaurants and businesses. Stay safe and have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you.